Thank you everyone for joining us today. Are you seeing my screen? Just want to make sure everyone is seeing my screen.
We can see your screen for sure.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our presentation on natural disaster damage assessment from satellite imagery. My name is Farshad. I'm a data scientist at REI Systems and provide AI solutions for federal government clients. I received my PhD from North Carolina State University, and I did computational science research at North Carolina State University. I invite my colleague to introduce himself.
My name is Zulfiqar Ahmed. I'm currently an associate data scientist from REI Systems. REI Systems is a federal government contractor, and we support government missions to solve different tasks ranging from grant management solutions to their AI needs. But today we would like to discuss about the natural disaster issue. The United States suffers from different kinds of disasters across the country. And on this graphic in the next slide, we can see the number of billion-dollar disasters that have happened in the US over the last 30 years. Of course, these costs are adjusted for inflation, but we can see that the number of disasters are growing drastically. And whether we want to pin the cause of these disasters to climate change or not, we cannot deny the fact that the number of such events have increased drastically in the last 5 years. So the recovery efforts also grow with the scale of these events as well. Therefore, we need a quick and efficient recovery process to help the government respond quickly to disasters and allocate help without any delay. But before we begin sending any help, we would have to evaluate the situation correctly and assess the damages. On the next slide, we see that the current damage assessment efforts involve manual review of aerial imagery of the affected areas. The images are taken by the airplanes as soon as the weather conditions allow, and once the images are ready, they are manually analyzed by reviewers. The reviewers have to manually scroll through those huge images, zooming in to see the details of the building. This process is very labor intensive because the images are very large, and depending on the nature of the disaster and the types of adversities caused by it, analysis efforts might take days and even weeks. Our goal of the project is to develop a deep learning solution to automate this image analysis process to reduce the response time. In the next slide, we can see that this will help allocate recovery resources to the areas that need it the most. Our solution is designed to ingest through images and run them through a deep neural network model and detect damaged structures. The pipeline can be automated to process large areas in minutes as opposed to days or weeks in case of a manual review. In order to develop a solution first, we had to come up with our own custom data set, which did not exist before when we began to work on this problem a year ago. In the current slide, we can see that the custom data set that we prepared for our deep learning framework consisted of images released by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration website. The NOAA website released voluminous high-resolution satellite imagery of the hurricane-affected areas in the US spanning the last 16 years, beginning with Hurricane Isabel. The custom dataset was prepared by utilizing the open source data available on the NOAA website in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael, which in the year 2018 primarily struck the states of Florida and Georgia in the US. We cropped these images to a size of 300 cross 300 pixels from the original imagery, which scanned a larger area. 300 cross 300 cropped images typically contained 1 or 2 buildings at most, while as the original imagery contained hundreds of buildings. In order to utilize the images for our deep learning frameworks, we annotated the images with COCO annotations, as we can see in the next slide. We utilized a tool to annotate the images incurred on the roof of the buildings and labeled these annotations with the title roof damage. For our current custom data set, we have included only the roof damage labels. Moving forward, we would also include further labels for other types of damages, such as tree damage and road damages. So this is how we prepared the data set for our deep neural network. And now Farshad will cover the techniques that were utilized to solve the automation of analyzing aerial imagery.
Thank you, Zulfiqar. Before talking about our model, I'd like to overview 4 most common computer vision tasks. On the top left, we have classification, which is the task of finding out whether an object of a particular category or class exists in an image or not. Next, we have object detection on the bottom left, where objects are not only classified in an image, but also they're localized by drawing bounding boxes around them. For instance, the red boxes around the balloons in the bottom left image are bounding boxes that localize them. Semantic segmentation gives us more granular information by detecting object category for each pixel in the image. Finally, instance segmentation model not only provides pixel-level classification, but also classifies each instance of a class separately. While semantic segmentation treats multiple objects of the same class as a single entity, the instance segmentation treats them as distinct individual objects or instances, as you can see on the top right and bottom right images. In the following slides, we'll present two different models that we have built for detecting damage groups, which correspond to semantic and instance segmentation tasks, respectively. We have used unit architecture, which you can see on the slide, to build the semantic segmentation model. It's a fully convolutional neural network whose architecture is designed to work with fewer training images and yield more precise segmentations than traditional convolutional neural networks. It's made of two paths, a contracting path, the left leg, and the expanding path, the right leg. The contracting path looks like an encoder that captures the context in the input image and is made of a stack of convolutional and max pooling layers. The expanding path takes the feature maps and upsamples them using transposed convolutional layers, which results in reducing the number of feature maps while increasing their height and width. Finally, a one-by-one convolution processes the feature maps to generate a segmentation map and thus categorizes each pixel of the input image. There are also skip connections between these two paths where semantic features maps from the contracting path of the network are copied within the expanding path. Skip connections benefit the unit performance in two ways. First, they prevent vanishing gradient issue. Second, they help avoid losing pattern information during upsampling. To improve the performance of unit even further, we incorporated resonant blocks into the backbone of unit, as you can see in the picture. Resonant blocks itself is a convolutional neural network. It has a simple idea: feed the output of two successive convolutional layers, as you can see on the picture on the right of this slide, and also bypass the input to the next layers using the skip connections. Due to these shortcut or skip connections, ResNet can include deep layers without facing the vanishing gradient issue. They also increase learning capacity in general. Before building our model, we modified the original images by overlaying masks that we obtained from COCO annotation tool on top of them. We then fed these modified images to the model. So we talked about our model architecture in previous slides. But you might ask, how do we know if our model performs well on image segmentation? To answer this question, we use dice similarity coefficient. It's a ratio of two areas, where the numerator is 2 times the area of overlap between predicted and ground truth regions, and the denominator is the sum of the areas of those two regions. The closer the dice coefficient to 1, the more accurate is the predicted segmentation map. With this definition, let us get straight to the result. We trained our semantic segmentation model with ResNet 50 blocks for the backbone of unit, where 50 stands for 50 hidden layers in the ResNet architecture. This model gave us a dice coefficient of 0.84. The reason that the dice coefficient is not close to 1 is related to the quality of our dataset to some extent. For instance, we see that these small dots in the both the predicted mask and also the original image, but they are missing in the ground truth mask due to human tagging mistake. However, the unit erroneously tagged this part of the roof as a uh, as a damaged area, which is a tree shadow on the roof, as we can see in the original image. In the previous slide, the image showed some roof shingles are removed and some roof papers are exposed. Here we observe a different kind of damage to the roof, where some framing and plywoods are exposed to the exposed. And unit can also mark them as damaged regions, as we can see here. And also there is a little dot here that exists in the original image. In addition, we see that unit doesn't mark debris, as we can see in the image, as damaged regions. Overall, we have found decent performance of unit for identifying damaged areas of building roofs from aerial imagery. To enhance the performance of our model, we need to expand our training set to include different types of damages with more precise annotations. At this point, I have Zulfiqar to take you through the second model we have built for roof damage identification.
To solve the automation of analyzing aerial imagery, in addition to semantic segmentation, like Farshad discussed, we also implemented the concept of instance segmentation. To reiterate the difference between the two concepts, semantic segmentation treats multiple objects of the same class as a single entity. In the illustrative schematic on the slide, on applying semantic segmentation to the original image, the resulting image indicates that, hey, these are the balloon pixels. On the other hand, instance segmentation treats multiple objects of the same class as distinct individual objects or instances. In the illustrative schematic on the screen, on applying instance segmentation to the original image, the resulting image indicates that there are 7 balloons at these locations, and these are exactly the pixels that belong to each one of them. Instance segmentation is typically a harder problem to solve than semantic segmentation, since it treats multiple objects of the same class as distinct individual objects. And instance segmentation works better with data sets where the objects in the data set have quantifiable feature sets that distinguish it from other instances of its own class. In our particular use case with the dataset where the images were revolving around roof damages, there is no set of quantifiable features that distinguish different types of roof damages. We were aware of this limitation when we started the project. However, we still wanted to experiment with the concept of instance segmentation to compare the results with semantic segmentation. On to the next slide, we utilized the mask-R-CNN algorithm to solve the instance segmentation problem in our project. There are 2 stages of mask-R-CNN. First, it generates proposals about the region where there might be an object based on the input image. Second, it predicts the class of the object, refines the bounding box, and generates a mask in pixel level of the object based on these first stage proposals. Both the stages are connected to a backbone structure. The backbone structure that we utilized is a feature pyramid style deep neural network. It consists of a bottom-up pathway, a top-bottom pathway, and lateral connections. The feature pyramid network that we utilized for the mask-R-CNN is the residual network, which is the same that we used for the unit model. On the next slide, we can see the architecture of the mask-R-CNN model. At the first stage of the mask-R-CNN, a lightweight neural network called region proposal network, as can be seen in the architectural diagram, scans the entire feature pyramid network top-bottom pathway, which is essentially a feature map, which may contain an object. While scanning the feature map is an essential way, an efficient way to detect features, we need a method to bind the features to its raw image location. This is where anchors come in play. Anchors are a set of boxes which, with predefined locations, scales relative to the images. Ground truth classes and bounding boxes are assigned to individual anchors according to an intersection over union value. As anchors with different scales bind to different levels of the feature map, the region proposal network uses these anchors to figure out where in the feature map there would be an object and what the size of its bounding box would be. At the second stage, another neural network takes the proposed regions from the first stage and assigns them to several specific areas of the feature map level. It scans these areas and generates object classes, bounding boxes, and masks. The procedure looks quite similar to the region proposal network, with the only difference that in the second stage, without the help of anchors, it utilizes an ROI align operation, which is similar to the ROI pool operation to locate the relevant areas of a feature map where there is a branch generating mask for each of the objects in pixel level. On the next slide, we can see the result of the mask-R CNN algorithm. These were the input images containing buildings with roof damages that we provided to the model. On the next slide, we can see the prediction masks applied on the images. On the prediction masks, we can see that the number next to the label indicates the confidence level of the mask-R CNN model. In the current images, we see that the model predicts these masks with 100% confidence. However, we can see that the features captured in the prediction masks also include undamaged areas and shadows as well. This is a key difference between semantic segmentation and instance segmentation, which would be covered in the next few slides. On the next slide, we have the evaluation metrics used for the mask-R CNN. To evaluate the results of the mask-R CNN model, we utilized the intersection over union parameter, also known as the Jacquard index. The accuracy metric that we utilized was that the intersection over union with a 50% overlap threshold would count towards a successful prediction. The results we received from the bounding box accuracy was 56.6%, and the accuracy for the segmentation was 55.2%. Let's look at how the mask-R CNN results matched with the unit predictions for the same images. On the current slide, we can see that the original image consists of one building with several portions of the roof damaged. We can see that the mask-R CNN outputs a prediction mask which is larger than the ground truth mask image. We observe that the mask-R CNN includes undamaged portions of the image and also includes shambles of the objects present in the image. Unit, on the other hand, draws a much more concise and precise prediction mask in comparison to the ground truth. This reiterates the fundamental difference between semantic segmentation and instance segmentation in our use case, wherein our dataset revolving around roof damages, there is no set of quantifiable features that distinguish different types of roof damages. Hence, instance segmentation models would not be able to distinguish between several instances of the same roof damage class and therefore groups it together in a single mask. On the next slide, in order to improve and enhance the results of the mask-R CNN model, we need to perform the following steps. We need to further tune the hyperparameters to deliver more precise and concise masks. We need to enhance the image pre-processing to remove noise in the images such as shadows. In conclusion, the mask-R CNN is not the ideal deep neural network for identifying roof damages. However, mask-R CNN will prove to be a useful algorithm for us to detect other damages such as tree damages and road damages, where the feature set for the objects are much better distinguishable than roof damages for the instances within the class. Hence, it can be used in addition to the unit model to identify other types of damages, except roof damages, of course. Farshad will now discuss about the XView2 competition that we took part in.
Now I shift the gear and talk about XView2 competition in which we participated shortly after we finished our adventure with semantic and instance segmentation. This competition was announced by the Defense Innovation Unit, which is a DoD organization. The competition was aiming to solve a similar problem that we were working on, but with two main differences. The first difference is that the dataset was consisted of pairs of images for before and after event, as you can see on the slide. Another major difference was that the post-disaster images were labeled with a severity degree from 0 to 3. 0 corresponds to no damage and 3 means destroyed building. Based on the requirements of the competition, we modified our previous solution by breaking it down into two parts: semantic segmentation model with unit, as you can see here, and classification model using a ResNet convolutional neural network for damage classification. We applied segmentation model to the pre-disaster image out of which we extracted building polygons. Then we overlaid the polygons on the post-disaster image. Next, we cropped out building locations and ran them through the classification model to identify the severity of the possible damage to them. Here you can see the result of our model on a sample pair of images from pre and post disaster events. The rightmost image shows the masks obtained from the segmentation model, which highlight the damaged buildings in our problem. In this case, there was a fire which wiped out some parts of the neighborhood. You can see in the middle image that the building on top portion of the image are missing when it is compared with the pre-disaster image. To evaluate our model, we used F1 score as required by the competition. The F1 scores for building localization and damage classification are respectively 88 and 68%. The overall F1 score is the weighted average of the mentioned scores and amounts to 74%. We attribute the relatively lower F1 score for damage classification to misalignment of buildings in pre- and post-disaster images. In other words, the polygons extracted from the pre-disaster image did not perfectly match with the locations of the corresponding buildings in some post-disaster images. This happens because the photographs are covering large areas on the map. Even slight skewness in the image can lead to the polygon missing the building from one image to another. I'd like to wrap up our talk by comparing two solutions, the ones with and without severity degree classification. Our initial solution that didn't require severity degree classification doesn't need pre-event images. Thus, it doesn't suffer from no alignment of geo-coordinates issue. In addition, another advantage of our solution is that it just needs one model, which is a semantic segmentation model, to be trained. However, the downside of our approach is that it doesn't detect missing buildings, for instance, the buildings that are wiped out by the hurricane. Furthermore, our model didn't have multiple labels for distinct types of damages. It just tells us whether there is damage or not. The model developed for XView challenge overcomes the limitations of our initial approach, but it adds more levels of complexity to the model. It requires pre- and post-event images, which can lead to misalignment issue we discussed previously. Furthermore, it requires two models to be trained. At the end, we propose to extend our work in order to include more types of damages in our data set, such as fallen trees or debris. Furthermore, we're looking into building a structured pipeline for deep learning framework that we have utilized to automate the aerial image analysis. We're also considering experiment with other state-of-the-art neural network architectures. At this point, I'd like to thank you for your attention and take your questions. Thank you so much.